The reason why most people feel confused with Claude isn't because it's genuinely complex. It's because all the tutorials start at the wrong place. They walk you through the interface, spend 20 minutes just on the installation alone, and by the time they get to the meat of it, you are already lost. I watched a lot of people trying to find their way around Claude, and I see getting them stuck in the same gaps. They don't understand what the tool is doing on each loop, why their prompts keep falling short, and how the memory and skills work together under the hood. Once these three things click for you, everything else is fast. And I'm going to show you how to learn and use 80% of Claude in the next 20 minutes. So let's get into it. Now, the funny thing is, even at the time of recording this video, I'm actually using Claude Code right now. And I want to tell you an important thing. Everyone thinks that Claude Code is you simply chatting with Code and Claude just doing the work for you in the background. It's a lot more than that. It's an agent or series of agents that reads across your entire project, edits across multiple files, run commands, and follows a plan that you have engaged and agreed with on Claude. And again, that's important to understand. Now, where do you actually access Claude Code? So for me, I'm using Claude Code on my desktop. So there's the chat version cowork as well as Claude Code. We're going to primarily be using it on desktop. There are other ways in which you can access this as well. If you're working in your web browser and you scroll over to Claude, when you click on it, here's what's going to happen. You'll get taken to this page where you can now get instructions on what to do next. Now, typically, if you're Windows or Mac, you can download this utility. I've got Windows and I've got a Mac as well, and I tend to use both of them, but you can download it. Alternatively, you can use Claude Code in Terminal. You can use that in VS Code, and there's a few other ways of utilizing that as well. But to be honest, I would advise you to stick to desktop because if you're not a developer, that's the easiest one to use. But if you don't mind a little bit of technical work, then VS Code or Terminal is good to use. And that is especially useful when you're trying to save some tokens because Claude can be very token hungry. Now, having said that, I want to talk about the third part of this video, and this is the most important one, which is your claude.md file. In essence, claude.md is a basic text file that lives in your project folder. It defines the entire context of what your project is all about. So every time you start a new project, it reads that file to understand what it needs to do or what has been done, or at the very least, it's going to point to the places where those files exist. Think of it as a briefing document you would hand over to a new employee. Say your standards, your preferences, what you don't like, and how you want things to be done. If you don't use this, Claude basically starts every session with 0. But if you do use this, Claude has important context around which it can build your entire thing. So any major thing that you do, any project that you undertake needs to have a claude.md file associated with it. Now, typically, I would encourage you to make this yourself. If you don't, Claude's going to make one for you, but that's okay. You can always update that as well. But this is a living and breathing file that is always updated. The key two things I want to tell you here is number one, keep it minimal. So don't add too much information, which means under 300 lines is more than enough when you're trying to build this out. And then as you're building this, make sure that you also link to external documents where necessary, because that allows Claude to go out there and look at those documents either within the project folder or outside. There's a lot of information that goes inside of it, but don't worry, I'm going to show you how to build one right now. So here are two ways of creating a claude.md file. Let's say you're working in a project and you've been working on that project for a while. Maybe this is something that you have established, something you were trying to build, but you don't have a claude.md file because you didn't build one. The simplest thing you can do is go in here, type init, and it's going to initialize a new claude.md file for you. So when I click that, it starts to read the entire project and build a Claude file around it. And this is done automatically. You don't need to touch a thing, but this is useful because in the future, when Claude comes back to this project, it doesn't have to reinitialize from scratch, and it's going to build out this entire thing for you in just a few minutes. So I'm going to show you what this looks like once this is done. So as you can see, the claude.md file is created, and it is pretty straightforward. This is something that gives us enough context to Claude when we kick off this session. But just in case you're working in a new project, all you have to do in this case is, for example, start a new session and you pick a new folder where you're working within the Claude project. And from there, you can explain what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. You can explain in simple words. You can use a voice to text tool like we have inside of AI Revenue Engine, which you're welcome to join, by the way, and get access to that for free. So you don't have to pay for services like Whisper. Plus, we have a lot of other cool resources. Anyway, so you can do that, and then Claude can build a claude.md file for you based on what it knows best and based on what it is you're trying to accomplish. But once you have that, then, like I said, the entire process around using Claude becomes much easier and much more affordable as well. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, and this is important as well, is the plan mode within Claude Code. So whenever you're building something out initially, of course, you want to go all in and start building it out from the moment you finish typing your message. But that is usually a bad idea, because if you build things without actually planning them, then you might end up making mistakes, or Claude may not understand the full picture that you're trying to build. So it's always recommended to first plan with Claude Code, and this is how you do it. So right now, of course, I'm set to bypass permission. So when you're working in a particular project, you're working within a folder, instead you choose the plan mode. And when you choose the plan mode, what you are now doing is you're brainstorming and you're engaging with Claude and explaining, this is what I want to do in this project, but let's plan out the scope fully so we don't have feature creep or we don't miss out something essential. So again, as you would, you explain to Claude what it is you're trying to do, but now instead of doing it, Claude plans it for you, and that plan is something you can take forward and utilize as well. Now, very important thing when we talk about planning is these sorts of different modes that are available. It's always advised to stay at a medium level unless you are working on a task which you know is going to be quite process driven, in which case you can switch to high, or if it's just simple writing stuff, you can stick to low, in which case Claude's not going to go beyond its basic effort. But models are important as well, because these models, if you use the wrong one, could be a cost sink, or if you use the wrong one, it could end up underperforming. So if you've got very basic single tasks, go for Haiku. If you've got very, very complex tasks where you want client-ready outcome, go for Opus 4.7, which is the latest model, or somewhere in between, you can stick to Sonnet 4.6. I do about 90% of my work inside of Sonnet 4.6. I just like it that way because it's a good balance between output and the tokens consumed. But sometimes when I'm doing extensive design work, I switch to Opus 4.7. So again, circling back to this, planning is very, very important, because if you plan out your projects well, then you'll be able to execute them better moving forward. Now, having said that, I want to talk about building something live, because this is really, really important. So Claude Code is what you would use to, as we say, wipe code your projects. You know, if you have an idea, you want to make sure you build it out. So let's do that right now. I'm going to ask Claude to understand what's inside this project, just so you can see as well where we can go with this. Could you give me a summary of what's inside this folder so we can proceed with it? Okay, so as you can see, these are the different frameworks we have available here, and this is what we typically use to write our entire launch copy, and they're fine because they exist in silo, and that is good. But what if I want to automate the entire thing with just basically one level of input, so no human in the loop? I would recommend having a human in the loop, but if I want to do that, here's what I would do next. I would ask Claude to plan out that with these agents, if we wanted to use all of these different ones, what could we do? Right? So how could we create an entire process? So it goes from an idea of a product all the way to creating first the positioning, the hooks, then writing the sales pages, writing the JV copy, writing email swipes, writing JV outreach messages, all of those things. So it could build out the entire project for me. So first we plan, then we ask Claude Code to build it for us. Now, I won't go too much into detail on how to actually build, because there are other videos around that topic you can check on my channel. I can even link to one underneath, but I can tell you this, that Claude is going to allow you to build stuff either on the web or as a desktop application. I advise you to use both when you get a chance. If it's a problem you want to solve for yourself, if it's a one-time thing or something you use once a month, having it on desktop, it's a pretty good idea. But if it is something you want to share with your team, you want to share with your clients, that's when you want to build something on the web. It takes a little bit more setup when you're trying to build on web, but it's totally worth it because you are able to then commercialize it and also make money with it. Which brings me to section number 6, and this time I want to talk to you about MCP connections here. What exactly is MCP? MCP refers to Model Context Protocol, and it's an open source standard basically set up by Anthropic in 2024. What this allows you to do in the simplest term is it allows you to connect with services outside of Claude easily. It's a little bit like APIs, but it's been developed a little bit differently, specifically by Anthropic. So let me show you what I mean. When you go to settings over here, you will see connectors, and connectors is how you can connect to various different services and invoke them right within Claude. For example, one of the things I'm doing right now, because we use Asana a lot, is I'm taking all the data from Asana that we have over the last 5 years, and I'm building an internal Wikipedia out of it, which is fantastic because now my team can refer to it whenever they're trying to build something, whenever they're trying to do something. So we've got connectors over here, and there's a ton of different connectors. Some of them are public, which is they've been made by these companies. Some of them are custom made, so people have made their own connectors. For example, one of our products is Mailviewer, and we're building an MCP for that as well, so you can extract all the data from Mailviewer right inside of Claude. Right now we use APIs, but using MCP makes it much faster to do, and using this is easy. You go into browse connectors, you can look at all the different connectors that are available over here, and you can just click on that and you can connect it with it right over here. So all of these different services are available depending on what you're using. And what you can also do is you can search for something here. So for example, Apollo, if there's something you're doing for accounting, you can find that here as well. That's entirely up to you. Now, when we talk about connectors, you also need to be aware of skills and plugins because you might end up using this quite often within Claude Code. Skills are essentially markup files, so MD files that dictate what that function should do. So this is typically defined as agents. So for example, if you are building a web app, if you want to build UI, you can have a bunch of skills in there that decide what kind of UI should be built based on what kind of web app you should be building. Now, typically skills should be something that should be customized to what it is you do, who you are. But quite often when we start working inside of Claude, we don't really have a benchmark to work with. So if you go searching online, there's tons of different skills available where you can download and you can call them and you can use them to realize exactly what it is that needs to get done in what order. Typically, when we talked about building the claude.md file, it also goes out and builds skills for you which are necessary. And I want you to think about skills as an agent. So for example, you can call one agent to design the app for you. You can call another agent to actually do the coding, another agent to then do the testing. And all these are different skills basically as a hierarchical thing. So just again, you're aware. Plugins, on the other hand, are a little bit different. So plugins are essentially specialized modular toolkits that can do a series of steps. So for example, let's look at this one, which is design, which is again different to Claude Design. So in this case, it gives you a series of steps, basically design workflow. So you can critique, it can do design system management, UX writing, accessibility audits, and all these things. So essentially what Anthropic and certain individuals outside of Anthropic have done is they have decided that when it comes to design creation, social media marketing, or productivity, or anything of that sort, there's a few sequence of steps that need to be taken, and they've created those sequence of steps and they've turned that into a plugin. So think of it like this. Let's say you want to do one thing inside of Claude Code, you'd ask a skill set to do it. And yes, that skill set might invoke other skill sets to do the same for you. But if you know that you want to get from A to B and there's a series of steps involved in that, and that never changes, you can do that via plugins. Of course, you have to create your own plugins if you want to build those, which can be a lot of work. So if you just go look online, again, you're going to find a lot of plugins that are available that you can literally plug in and use. So again, let's look at it like this. Skills are typically singular actions that tell Claude what to do. Connectors are services that allow you to tunnel into external services that basically allow you to extract data or write data in certain cases. And plugins are pretty much a combination of skills and sometimes even connectors that allow you to do a whole thing. And plugins are difficult to create, so don't worry about creating them yourself. You don't have to be concerned with that. But if you want to just go research and find a plugin that works for you, you can do that. There are some already available over here, but honestly, between skills and connectors, you should be pretty good. Now, the last thing about what I'm not covering in this video. So again, I've talked about as many things as I could in this video, but I haven't talked about CI/CD automation, Agent SDK, GitHub Actions, multi-agent orchestration. There's a lot of things that can go into Claude Code, but if you just utilize what I've told you, then you'll be able to get 80% of value out of Claude Code without technically overwhelming you. Again, all that stuff is for developers, but you are an operator, and I want you to use AI in your business to make more money, free up more time, so you can do things you want to do rather than just be stuck behind your computer screen. So that's 80% of Claude Code right there, and to be honest, you can do a lot with just that. The part I didn't cover in this video is how you connect all of this into a system so it can do things for you that you would typically need a team for. This full course walks you through the entire system I use to run full operations using Claude without hiring anyone. So if you were looking to build a one-person team, this is the course that you should be watching.